Thanks so much, Andrew, and good afternoon to people. And may I just start by saying how incredibly exciting it is to see people in person, to be able to touch them, prod them, and everything else. What a great event. This talk actually builds on what we've just heard about. And the reason that's kind of interesting is that when the question was asked, can you actually start trading in metals that are still in the ground? And it's a really good question and something that various people have floated for a while. But to do that, we need to really know everything about the rock that contains that metal. We need to know where the metal is, what it looks like, how we'd get it out if we wanted to get it out. And that all comes back to the question of what is the kind of data that's being collected during the project life cycle of exploration, and how we're using that data, and is it the correct quality for what we need in the future? And I think technology is really changing now in terms of supporting us as an industry to move the quality of the data we're using to the next level. Ultimately, when you're in the process of putting your first drill hole in, or you're drilling out the bench for blasting or something like that, that process of drilling is actually a process of making a decision. The decision is related to the fact that you drill, you ask the question, you're drilling to take a geological sample. You're sampling the rock. It's all about the rocks, and I can say that as a geologist. It's actually all about the rocks here. And you're sampling that rock to measure something in that rock, something about the chemistry, the mineralogy, the petrophysical property, and its spatial location. You're going to make an interpretation of that data, and then you're going to use that to inform or support you to make a decision. You need to make a decision, and then the cycle moves around. You action that decision. There's no point in making decisions you can't action. So that cycle at the moment takes probably too long for us as an industry to do, and we're making decisions without being supported by the right quality of data. And so something we've been trying to address as an industry, something we're trying to address as our company, is to bring the technology to bear to improve that in some way. Because ultimately, as a geoscientist and as an industry, what we're trying to do when we move a project through the life cycle is we're trying to increase the rock knowledge. We're trying to increase our knowledge of that bit of rock that ultimately we're going to take out of the ground and extract or produce a product from that rock at the end of the day. And to do that, we need to know a lot about it. And really, it comes down to four things. It's quite a simple equation. You need to know four things. You need to know about the the texture of that rock, which you get from imagery or petrophysics. You need to know about the geochemistry, the grade, the mineralogy, and you need to know about the spatial location of that sample, where it came from and how it's related to everything else in the geological model. And there are sensors, there are technologies that allow us to go and collect that information, but ultimately it's about producing that information and building it as we go. And the geologist is sitting there, and really what we're trying to do here is we've now got some fantastic sensing systems out there, sensing hardware. Portable XRF's a really good example. There's a picture of an Olympus portable XRF. We can now go and generate a multi-element assay from a sample very, very quickly, and for a minimal capital expenditure. We get that result quite quickly, and we can make a decision. And ultimately, the technology is now moving us to the point where the sensing hardware's evolved to the point where we're now getting great data, but now we need to actually manage that data and make sure it's the right quality of data to make the decision we want to make. And partly this is about the fact that we're now starting to use much more complicated methods to turn multiple data streams into information. Machine learning, we've all heard the buzzwords, all of those kind of AI methods, because they really require quality data to feed into them. If you give them rubbish data, you're going to get a rubbish result. At the end of the day, it's about building that picture. You see the picture on the end there. This is from the Mine Portal software that we recently acquired. Because ultimately it's about giving you that spatial answer. You want to know, where is the rock hard, where is the rock soft? Where does the gold occur at pyrrhotite? Where does it not occur at pyrrhotite? These are decisions that have an impact in the processing plant that could be made in that very first exploration drill hole with the right quality of data. And so it's really a chain from sensing to data curation and QA/QC to data analysis to the answers. And I guess the really important thing here is throughout a project lifecycle, as I said, the data you collect at the very front end of that lifecycle can absolutely have an impact in a decision that's made in the processing plant down the very far end, or even actually, I need to extend this cartoon now, into mine closure, reclamation, into any understanding what environmental problems there may be down the track. And so if we know about the rock on day one, it's going to have an impact all the way through. And that's what I call a time value of data. There is value to that piece of data that actually increases, like in a discounted cash flow forecast, right? You can do the same with the value for the data. There's actually value to that data further down the track. And so the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we putting enough emphasis on the data we collect on day one, thinking about the fact that it might have use down the track? And so really, like I said, it's about linking geosensing, generating the data, into systems that turn that data into information using techniques like machine learning. There's an example of clustering some lithogeochemical data, so taking multi-element data, turning it into rock types, using, in that case, T-SNE analysis. There's lots of them. The recipe book is full. And ultimately, though, that is about supporting a geoscientist or a mine manager or a process engineer to make the right decision that ultimately optimizes the system or saves money at some point or makes the system run cleaner. So there's a process loop there where you put data science in, but you need to add the geoscience back into that process, and you go around that loop. If you just take the data without worrying about the quality, then you start to get noise throughout that whole system, and then that decision, you may be making a decision that's not based on the right type of information. As an example of kind of data quality, I'm sorry, apologies for putting a geochemical slide up here, but the point is that this is an example from portable XRF. And on the left-hand side there is a copper result. On the right-hand side is magnesium. So two commodities. You might be interested in copper. And the bars basically show you the range of values that portable XRF is generating based on different sample types. So for copper there, if you're just zapping the rock, point and shoot the machine at the rock, you're going to get a copper result somewhere between, say, 90 ppm and 250 ppm. And that might be absolutely fine. That might be a good piece of information. That tells you there's nothing. It tells you there's either zero, a certain amount, or a lot, and you might be happy with that. But as you start to do sort of more sample prep, as you're a bit careful about the way you produce the data, we crush the sample, we make it representative, then we reduce that error, we reduce that range. And that gives us a much more accurate result. Now for copper, that's one thing. For something like magnesium, which you would use in understanding what rock type or understanding how well the rock is going to crush in your plant or process, the ranges you get are huge, right? The impact of sample quality and the use of portable XRF have a massive impact in the light elements. And so it may be that on day one as an exploration geologist, you're not that interested in the magnesium, but it could be that the geometallurgist comes along at some point 3 years later and says, did we collect magnesium as part of that data collection exercise? We need to use it. It's really important. So thinking about data quality up front is really important. And so, you can start to, if you really worry about the data quality and the way you do things up front, this is an example of rapidly collecting portable XRF data throughout a drilling program. These samples were all properly prepped and presented to the instrument. That doesn't add a huge amount in, a little bit of cost, not a huge amount. But you get a massive amount of data quite quickly at the time you're drilling. You can then use some machine learning technique. In this case, one of my favorites is self-organizing maps. It's an unsupervised learning technique. It takes data and it turns it into classifications. Basically, it says, across my multiple elements there, whatever there is, 12 elements, I'm going to now see how those things classify. And that basically is related to rock type here. So we're going to do that, and we're then going to plot that downhole and give that information in a piece of software like IAGAS, for instance, give that information to the geologist, and they can have that in their hands the very first moment they're logging the core, or as they're making decisions about where they want to drill the fifth drill hole in this tenement. Do I drill the fifth drill hole? Or do I move on? So getting that quality correct is really important up front. And so data quality will become increasingly important to think about as we move to this more geo-data science world. As we start applying these machine learning techniques, we're going to need to worry about data quality from day one. Systems like IMDEX Hub IQ, which is our kind of cloud-based system, is a good example where we can kind of consume data, curate it, manage the quality for the geologist, and allow them, take the burden away from them so that they can be a geologist and make decisions, not be burdened with data management. And then, there will always be a competition between sensors running at speed and sensors generating quality data. That as the technology evolves, those two worlds will come together, but sometimes you have to make a decision about absolute speed versus quality, and that's going to be an important part of your thought process. So I hope that's left you with some ideas and some things to think about. Pretty rushed through, but I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for your attention.